The day David Wallace walked into the foster care center, the sky outside was a sheet of gray, and the rain tapped softly against the windows, like the gentle ticking of a clock running out. He wasn't looking for a child, not exactly. At 52, widowed and childless, he had spent most of his life surrounded by books rather than people, running a small, aging bookstore tucked between a bakery and a barber shop in a quiet corner of town. But something had tugged at him for weeks, an ache, a question he couldn't answer, a feeling he no longer belonged to just solitude. That's when he saw her. In a room full of louder, more desperate children, she sat alone in a corner, legs tucked under her, gripping a stuffed bear that had lost most of its fur. Her name was Emily. 8 years old, dark eyes too knowing for her age, and silent. The social worker said she hadn't spoken since her last placement ended 6 weeks earlier. She's difficult, they said, as if that explained her bruised spirit. But David didn't see difficult, he saw something familiar. He knew the pain of loss, of being forgotten. Without asking why, he returned the next day, and the next. He brought her books, fairy tales, animal stories, picture books, and left them by her chair. On the 5th day, she looked up at him and whispered, "You're the man from the bookstore." That was all he needed. Within a month, the adoption was finalized. David brought her home to a modest apartment above his store, where walls were lined with shelves and the smell of paper and ink lingered like memory. Emily didn't talk much those first months. She wandered the store quietly after school, sometimes helping dust the shelves or rearrange books alphabetically. At night, they ate grilled cheese and soup. On weekends, they played checkers and read aloud from classics. She never called him Dad, but she never let go of his hand when they crossed the street. Over the years, the walls between them thinned. She would smile more, laugh when he made puns, and once, after a bad dream, she curled up beside him on the couch until morning. At school, she excelled in art and literature. David attended every parent night, every recital, every award ceremony. He never told her what to become, he just reminded her she could be anything. When she turned 16, she gave him a hand-drawn card that read, "Thank you for choosing me when no one else would." He kept it tucked into the back of the cash register for years. David never wanted repayment. He never asked for anything but her happiness. But Emily, growing wiser with each year, never forgot that on a rainy Tuesday, a stranger with kind eyes and old hands gave her not just a home, but a reason to believe again. And even then, deep in her heart, she was already making a quiet promise. One day, she would find a way to give something just as meaningful in return. 2 decades had passed since Emily first stepped into David's quiet life, but time had not dulled her memories, it had only deepened their meaning. Now 30, Emily stood tall as a respected architect in the city, her designs praised for their warmth and purpose. But despite her success, she had never stopped thinking about the man who changed her life with nothing more than patience, a quiet home, and the kind of love that asked for nothing in return. David, now in his 70s, still ran the bookstore, though its foot traffic had dwindled. The shelves were dustier, the register slower, and his steps heavier. He never told Emily how difficult things had become, how the arthritis in his hands made it harder to sort books, how the nights felt colder without anyone there. He didn't want to burden her. But Emily, ever observant, noticed the change in his voice during their weekly phone calls. One afternoon, without warning, she returned home. She found David hunched over a worn-out ledger behind the counter, struggling to make the numbers work. He looked up, stunned. "You're here," he said, as if it were a dream. "I am," she replied softly. What David didn't know was that Emily had spent the past year secretly working on a project, a complete renovation and relaunch of the bookstore. She'd purchased the adjacent lot, filed the permits, and used her savings to create something not just beautiful, but lasting. A month later, on his 74th birthday, she led him down the block with his eyes covered. When she uncovered them, he saw a new sign gleaming in gold letters, Wallace and Daughter, books, coffee, community. The building had been transformed, large windows flooded the space with light, shelves crafted from reclaimed wood stretched high above cozy reading corners, and a small cafe served pastries and espresso in the back. But most striking was a large mural near the entrance. A painting of a man reading to a small girl under a tree, the caption beneath it simply reading, "Where her story began." David's eyes filled with tears. "You did all this?" he asked. "For you," Emily replied, her voice trembling. You gave me a life. You gave me stories and safety. I built a future because you believed in me before I believed in myself. This is how I thank you, by making sure the place that saved me can keep saving others." That night, as they sat side by side in the new store, sipping tea and watching customers browse the shelves, David rested his hand on hers. "You didn't owe me this," he said. She smiled gently. "I know. But I wanted to. Because love doesn't forget." In the silence that followed, no more words were needed. He had once chosen her, quietly and completely, and now, years later, she had chosen him back, with everything she had.